Fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I definitely want to get into the bulk of this webinar. Please keep letting us know where you're calling in from. Friends, my name is Shauna James. I'm the Community and Events Manager here at PreSales Collective. I've been with the company since January, and it is my pleasure to be with these three fabulous panelists today for this session. For those of you that can only join us for a little bit, just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded. So if you registered for the event, which if you're here, you'll be receiving a recording of it following the event. So just to go over a little bit of an agenda, I'm going to start with some welcome and intros, then we're going to get into the bulk of the session. Some of you have submitted questions ahead of time, so we'll go ahead and answer those throughout the session. Then we will have time for summary and announcements and get some of you off to the rest of your days, and some of us, like Marjorie and myself, off to bed. So that is the plan for today. Before I go ahead, I just want to say a humongous thank you to you all for making the PreSales Collective possible. We are a community of 25,000 people all over the globe, pre-sales professionals, and this number is only growing. I'm so thrilled to be a part of this community and help folks out throughout the year. And as we close out 2022, we have a lot to look forward to in 2023. So thank you for being here and coming back. While we're here today, to get the most out of the webinar, we just ask that you use the Q&A function. You can find that at the bottom of your Zoom screen in the bar. It says Q&A. You can ask your questions there. We can get to it. Or you can put them in the chat, whichever you feel most comfortable with. And always, please be active in the chat. We'll be monitoring it and making sure that we get to questions as we go ahead. So, without further ado, I would love to introduce our phenomenal panelists for today. Marjorie, David, and Bastian are joining us from New Jersey. Marjorie, you're in New Jersey?
Yes.
Sydney and the Gold Coast. We're well represented all over the globe. So Marjorie, I'll pass it over to you. If you could just give us a brief overview, your current role, where you're based. Oh, I took that from you. What your purview is, and how long you have been in pre-sales.
Wow. Well, I'm super excited to be here. Thanks for inviting myself and the rest of the team here, Shauna and all. So my name is Marjorie Abdel-Karim. I'm here because I love chatting with pre-sales professionals. And to Shauna's question earlier, I've been in some form of customer-facing role for the past 20 years, believe it or not. I started my career in professional services, and today I'm actually on the customer success side of the house. So still keeping in touch with my pre-sales brethren and friends, where I have a ton of fun spending time with all of you. And to what Shauna said, I'm based here in New Jersey, New York metro area, and I work for Amazon Web Services in our CSM organization.
Fantastic. And Bastian.
Yeah, thanks, Shauna. I've been in pre-sales pretty much 15 years now, and started my journey in Europe, in the Netherlands, for a small ERP company in pre-sales. I used to work in technical consulting before that. Then I moved over to Oracle, and Oracle, I was lucky enough to get a transfer to Australia, so that's why I'm in this beautiful part of the world. But yeah, lots of year ends I've experienced, and hoping to share some of the things that I've learned over the years, and looking forward to your questions as well if there are any. Thanks, Shauna.
Fantastic. And David.
Yeah, so Dave Santellis, my current role is a principal enterprise architect for Workday here in Sydney. So essentially, I've been in pre-sales from day one. So I started off as a graduate in pre-sales, which was back in 2001. So now we're talking about 21 years now doing pre-sales, coming up to 22 years, and it has evolved significantly over time. Really looking forward to this webinar, because a lot of us, and I know I was guilty of this very early on, just continue on and go through the end of year just like it was nothing. In fact, I remember playing cricket in the office sometimes when I first started, because there was nobody around. But nowadays, yeah, there's so much that can be done. So I'm really looking forward to this webinar.
It's fantastic. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So we've curated 5 tips with this panel of experts to really talk about how we can be more mindful and more conscious about ending our years. And it's not always in the tactical work that we do, finish out the data sets, make sure your emails are sent, put your out of office on. There's some more soft asks that I think we can make of ourselves and make of our teams to create a better runway going into 2023 and into our next years. So let's go ahead and get started. So this tip number one, complete a personal inventory. What in the world is that? You're going to complete a personal inventory and evaluate where you are. David, give us a little bit of insight about what this tip means to you.
Look, it can mean a number of things, but essentially what I take this as is really reflecting on what you've done throughout the year, really understanding the achievements that you've made, and also celebrating those little wins. Self-analyzing is so important in pre-sales and really helps you grow as a pre-sales professional. And in terms of self-analysis, something that's been going around lately has been this quietly quitting fad. I'd really ask yourself the question, do you feel as though you have quietly quit in your role? And it's something that through personal reflection and analysis, you can answer that honestly with yourself, and then try to figure out ways to combat that and make the role either more exciting or look at other ways to address that. So I'd say that to me, this means reflection and really self-analysis on how you did and celebrating the wins.
Absolutely. I love that idea, David, that we're taking stock and really being honest with ourselves about what is and what isn't working. And have we checked out? Have we looked at this end of the year as a time to check out, to put ourselves on the back burner instead of dialing up the notch in ways in which we can? That's great. Marjorie, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
What comes to mind is it's, as you mentioned, holiday season, and everywhere you go, you hear jingles. And there's a jingle here that talks about making a list and checking it twice. And I got to say, I think, as you think of the work that you've done throughout the past year, make that list, sit down and actually do an inventory of all the things that you've done. And the first thing I would say is celebrate it, right? Make sure to give yourself a little pat on the back that you've done a great job. You're continuing to do more and you're going to grow. And I think the second piece is, for many of us, promotion time starts in the March, April timeframe in many companies. If you've got that inventory of all the work that you've done, it's about making sure that you know what achievements you've accomplished, you've documented all of your outcomes, and you're ready not just for your performance review, but you're ready to showcase to everyone all the awesome work that you've done this past year.
That's fantastic. Someone once suggested on a webinar to start keeping a folder of your wins, whether that's a really nice email that someone sent about, a deal that they were particularly excited to work with you on, or, your boss sending you a note, hey, really appreciate you stepping in on that demo. That was great. Just keeping a folder. I think oftentimes we forget, or we have trouble remembering the successes, but we're really good at telling ourselves all the things that we did wrong for the year. But we can flip that script by keeping the file folder just for us to use. Bastian, I'd love to give your thoughts on this before we close out this tip.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking back about like the 15 year ends that I went through as a pre-sales person, and they're so vastly different because sometimes you get extremely busy with stuff. Like last year at Pega, for example, we had this massive RFP come in just a few weeks before Christmas. So you're crazy busy, and other times it's like David mentioned, you're playing crickets in the hallways because there's just nothing to do. And I think especially the first few years in pre-sales, when it was quiet, I kind of felt a bit guilty about it. Like you've done all your work, you've done your trainings, you've planned ahead for next year, and then there's just some time to relax as well. And I think that's part of taking that personal inventory and just accept that sometimes work is quiet, especially at the end of the year. And I had to learn to not feel guilty about that, and because there will be other times in the year where you'll be swamped and you'll make extra hours and everything. So I think that's my tip for the quiet times. Don't feel guilty if you can spend a Friday afternoon with the family rather than sitting in the office twiddling your thumbs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fabulous. All right, great. So tip number one, complete a personal inventory. Oh, there's great insights here. Let's move on to tip number 2. You said freshen up your digital presence. I feel like I have a lot of conversations with community members, especially in pre-sales, who shudder at this idea of a digital presence around, there's like LinkedIn superstars right now who are like posting on the internet all the time, and that can be daunting for some. But it definitely sounds like from this group that there is a need, at least from what we talked about before this, to really think about your presence online and your prowess online, and what you have done and maybe where you can share thought leadership. So David, I'd love to start with you. What are your thoughts about this?
I love what you said there. It can be daunting sometimes seeing some of these influencers pulling millions of views, and then you post something and you get maybe tens of views. But it's less about the people out there, it's more about you. So what I'd say in terms of freshening up your digital presence is, make sure your resume is up to date, make sure LinkedIn makes sense, give some good descriptions about your roles and your responsibilities, maybe even talk about some of the wins that you've had, leave customer names off, of course, but talk about transformation that you've made and that you're proud of. And I do ask, when was the last time you updated LinkedIn? Fun ways to refresh how you present yourself to that broader world, I'd say. And don't worry about the those people who are generating the thousands upon thousands of views. It really doesn't matter. It's kind of a self-catharsis if you post on LinkedIn. I did one after watching Band of Brothers, right? And I just found some leadership lessons within, and I thought, what, I'm just going to share that with the world, just more to cement it in my own mind. And that's one of the last series of posts that I did. So that's what I'd say.
That's fabulous. And David, just to double click on that a little bit, you mentioned one source of inspiration for posting on LinkedIn. Do you have any other, people or ways that you find inspiration to, share your thought leadership on LinkedIn or other places? Are there people you look to, books you like to read, TV shows?
Oh, absolutely. All the time. One of my favorite things is to think about some of the challenges that I've had throughout my career and really get other people's perspectives on what they would have done in similar situations. We recently had a tech summit in Bali, luckily in Bali with Workday. And we're sitting around the table with a couple of colleagues and some management colleagues, and we were talking about a management thing that I'd come across, a challenge. And I really wanted to see other people's perspectives. And it's great just hearing how some people had their own ideas and so on. So it really helps calibrate as well. So it's really great to get that that calibration and also to get that inspiration.
It's fabulous. Bastian, would love to hear your thoughts here.
Yeah, I think being present digitally is important all around the year, not just at the end. So I'll talk about how I do that during the year. So we've got a great tool called ShareHub, and that so content that you can share on LinkedIn is provided by the company. But what I like to do, I don't like to just press share and share the content that's there, but I like to personalize a little bit to make sure that it kind of resonates with the people that I'd like to reach out to on LinkedIn, or people that I want to attract to my profile. So I think that's like making it personal is probably the most important thing for me there. The other thing is like thinking about the end of the year, and yeah, I mentioned that some years you've got a lot of time at your hands. It might be nice to just start thinking about writing articles, and I know for myself that's been on my to-do list for a long time. It doesn't mean that I always actually do it, but I think it's a nice way to kind of share your knowledge with internal like people in Pegasystems that can learn maybe from my experience as being relatively new in the company. How have I picked up the knowledge about the product, and what sparked my interest when I started learning. But also externally, if I hear about how customers use Pegasystems and what the values that they get out of it, it's great to share that sort of thing online in an article as well.
That's fantastic. I coach a lot of folks while they have ideas that they want to submit to the PreSales Collective blog. And some feedback I hear quite often is, I don't know if what I have to say is going to resonate with the community. Is it too immature, or is it too rudimentary? And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we forget that our audience is not always the people above us who we're trying to impress. It's the people behind us who need our
Absolutely.
knowledge. What was your first 30, 60, 90 at the company? What's your best interview tip? When was the last time you failed during a demo, and how did you fix it? What did you learn? These sort of unsexy conversations that we don't want to have. We want to talk about, the big stuff. But I think that when we think about our sharing thought leadership as a way to support people who may be in a different stage of their career, especially earlier in their career, it's a really great way to start thinking about your thought leadership as leading, looking back, instead of just saying, what's the most innovative thing I could possibly put on the internet right now. I mean, those ideas are always great too, but I'm really
and
encouraged by that.
Oftentimes reading those posts from others as well, especially from other pre-sales professionals, it's always so familiar, because we all go through the same things, right? We all make the same mistakes, and hopefully we all learn from what we share online. But yeah, it's great.
That's awesome. And Marjorie, I would love to hear your thoughts here as well.
I'm going to keep on the holiday theme, but this is the more American theme on being thankful, right? So we're in that period of the year where we're celebrating and being thankful for everything that's around us. And one thing I'm thankful for is the pre-sales community that I'm a part of. I've been a part of this community since its early inception, and the timing of it was perfect because we were at a point in the world, in our lives, that we all just needed that sense of connection. And I think as we look at our digital presence and how we connect from a community perspective, it's so important that we're engaging other pre-sales professionals, that we're joining, to the folks that are here, joining these webinars, learning from one another, offer to host. I mean, I know Shauna probably would love to have other hosts supporting her here. And I would say the other thing is attending community events. I know many cities here in the US, and I'm sure globally, folks are hosting, or you can host your own, right? Offer it up to Kevin or Shauna that you're interested in hosting a community event. And I've met so many amazing people at those events, and they're people that I don't work with on a regular basis. We sell completely opposite technologies, have nothing to do with one another, but we have something in common, which is being in this profession that, one, is so misunderstood. Not many people really understand it. And I think, we bring that common sense of belonging when we come together, and then just talking about it, right, at these types of events, I think is fantastic. So leverage the time of being thankful and spend time with one another as part of your community events.
Yeah, for a shameless plug, there are 2 community-led events happening in Australia in the next couple weeks, one in Canberra and one in Brisbane. I'll drop that in the chat when I'm done with my hosting duties today. So folks can sign up for that if you're nearby. Fantastic. Any other thoughts here about the digital presence? Any other thing that we want to mention before we move on to tip 3?
I love what you both talked about, you and Bastian, regarding the writing. I would even say the joint writing. Just recently, I collaborated with a bunch of folks, and this was more on the women in the workforce type of conversation. And the feedback that I've gotten, to what Shauna said, it's the people behind you that are like, oh my gosh, that was totally something that I needed to read. It's such an empowering tool, right? I'm not a writer. I hate writing, actually. I have found this community of people who just want to put their ideas somewhere, and obviously putting it in writing, I think, is super powerful for others to learn from.
Absolutely. And I'll just plug again that if you're sitting in the audience today, or you are rewatching this on YouTube or some other way of receiving this information, PreSales Collective is here to help you get your thought leadership out as well. I'm trying not to plug the organization too much, although you're here for a reason. But I do want to say that it's part of our job to make sure that the people who have great ideas and who want to help, grow their LinkedIn, or want to help, grow their prowess around writing, come to us. And even if you just come to come with an idea or an outline, we help you as a part of being a member of our community, get your article published. It's really important to me that we continue to have, diverse voices in the space. So even if you don't think you're a writer, I believe you are, and we're going to get you there. Okay, fabulous. Let's move on to tip number 3. I love this tip because I can imagine by the end of the year, folks have some serious thoughts, feelings, and emotions about their sales counterparts. So tip number 3 is think about some ways to help out, reach out to your sales counterparts. Bastian, let's start with you. What do you think about this tip? How do you utilize it?
Yeah, so when I thought about this, what came to mind was that the selling in Q4 is, at least from my experience, it's typically over. Like you've done the selling work, you're planning for next year, but Q4 at the same time is usually the biggest quarter of the year as well. So a lot of business needs to be closed, and that's kind of where we're not as involved in the closing business as our sales counterparts. So I think my biggest tip is, and then what I try to do is stay flexible. So even if you feel like there's not a lot of workload at the moment, maybe, or you're knee deep in that RFP response, there will be questions from customers that might be. What I've seen happen quite a bit is customers is about to sign, and then they're like, but what am I actually getting when I sign this? What's included? What's not included? So then salespeople brings pre-sales in again to kind of talk through what exactly it is that they're getting. So I think being flexible and be able to respond to those sorts of questions and help the sales counterparts to finish the year strong, I think is the main thing. And just be mindful that other people in the organization have different pressures from us as pre-sales. Because these sales guys, they just need to close their business and finish the year strong. So they've got a lot more pressure on them for that end of the year than we typically do. So being flexible, I think, is the main thing for me there.
You mentioned earlier that Q4 can be sometimes quiet, and so how, when we have a little more space, can we offer some space? And it also sounds like you're talking about empathy. That there are folks who are on a different timeline, a little bit more stressed, maybe dealing with different priorities, and how can we help them out? Because I think in the long run, next year, when they, closed their deal, when they had a really successful time and you were part of that, that is setting you up for greater success in the next year, that they have allyship going into future deals. Makes you a trusted advisor and partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. Marjorie, would love to hear your thoughts here.
So SCs, I find them to be very savvy when it comes to data. And whatever CRM tool you're using is going to have a treasure trove of information and data that you can really sift through, whether it's for looking at how to accelerate existing opportunities and determining whether or not there's some type of technical validation that you could help support, or if it's for contracts that are up for renewals and you're looking for an upsell opportunity. Again, data is super powerful. So leveraging your CRM system to help you identify what are some of those areas that, we talked about your list of awesome accomplishments earlier. This could help build that out for you as well, right? Because now you're going out and you're seeking for how to accelerate the time to closure on certain opportunities that you're working with the account manager. And I think, as part of that, as we think of, engaging our customer, I'm going to toss my customer success hat on for a second here, but I'll say even, think about on the post-closure side, when you think about the data power that you have in understanding your customer and helping them accelerate that adoption as well. Many of us are starting to have revenue targets as part of our quota plans, right? If that is something that's going to impact you in the coming year, start planning for it. Make sure that you're ahead of the curve and making sure that you're putting together close plans with your customers and how they're planning on adopting the solution or technology you're helping them buy.
That's great. And David?
Yeah, so we've spoken about deals closing and current data. Just some really good points there from Bastian and Marjorie. I just wanted to point out, what about Q1 and Q2? Like we have, I've experienced personally things like 6 to 9 month sales cycles. That means that you would have had to have been talking to in that final quarter, if not the quarter before, some customers. Let's start looking forward a bit, and it doesn't have to be cold calling like in Boiler Room or anything like that. It can be, quite frankly, reaching out to somebody in your patch at a customer who doesn't have an ongoing opportunity right now and saying, hey, do you feel like catching up for a coffee? And then catch up and just have a chat. That's really all it takes. And new research is showing as well that cold calling isn't really working out there. People would much rather have an email that they can have a look at and respond to if they find any value in what you're offering. It could be just as easy as looking through LinkedIn, finding a contact that you might have and say, hey, I haven't spoken to Joe in a while. I might reach out and offer to buy him a coffee and just have a chat. And more often than not, maybe nothing will come of it. But if something does come of it, I mean, imagine coming back to your sales rep and bringing value to them as opposed to them having to do that all the time. I think if I was a sales rep, I'd be very appreciative of my pre-sales.
Helping with the relationship building. That's a great point, David, and a genuine relationship building. Less cold call, more, hey, just want to make sure I'm keeping up to date on how things are going. It really does go a long way. And I think you're very correct that the sales counterparts appreciate some of that legwork being done. Fantastic. All right, let's move on to tip number 4, unless we have anything else about our sales counterparts in tip number 3. Fabulous. All right, connect with someone. All right, pretty general. Connect with someone, a friend, a relative. No. Let's get serious. Marjorie, what does this mean to you? How do you use tip number 4 to round out your year successfully?
Oh my gosh, this one is not even something you should just round out your year with. You should be doing this constantly. There are 2 things that I love to do and receive or be a part of. One is just a random reach out. I got to tell you, when someone that I haven't talked to from either a previous job or, many years that we haven't worked together, and it's just sending you this text to say hi, see how you're doing. And it becomes, and ultimately it becomes a conversation, and there's that reconnecting and hearing from folks and seeing how they're doing and what they're up to, and really, learning also, especially if you haven't talked to someone in a while, it's an opportunity to say, so what you been up to? Tell me a little bit more about your job and, the new company that you're at. And the other one is connecting with new people. And I know not many people are traveling as often, but one of the things I used to love doing, so I'll talk about the physical world and we'll talk about how we do this in the virtual world. But whenever we have a conference or like a sales kickoff or whatever it was, I'd intentionally for breakfast not plan meetings with my team. And I'd just sit at some random table by myself and wait for it to fill up with folks. And that was my opportunity to meet new people, whether it be at, a conference that I was learning at, or again, a company-based conference. And wow, how many people you meet. I have met some of the most brilliant people in those types of settings. From a virtual perspective, that becomes a little harder to do. It requires a little less randomness and a lot more intentionality. But what I would suggest you do is anytime you talk to someone that you do know, say, you know what, I'm trying to expand my network. I'd love to meet one new person or 2 new people, and ask for that intro. Say, hey, can you introduce me to 2 new people that I don't normally work with on a daily basis? And you'd be surprised at how willing people are to introduce you to new folks and get you connected to different people within your company. Again, it's all about learning new things. So I would even say, I want to meet someone in, finance or marketing, a department that you don't normally work with as well. Super powerful from a learning perspective.
That's great. I love that. David, what are your thoughts here?
Probably tack on a little bit if Marjorie doesn't mind. Also be open to and receptive to talking to new people at conferences. The conference I went to, I actively had to fight the urge to sit with my team to go out there and make those connections, but also those connections needed to be open to be able to want to talk to me. So great point. what I wanted to raise was about giving back to the pre-sales community. And often on LinkedIn, I'll get somebody reaching out, asking for a bit of advice, asking for a phone call, asking for a chat, asking for a coffee. My last one was with Jess, so shout out to Jess. But it's amazing how it can also give back to you as well, as a pre-sales leader or just as a pre-sales professional. I got asked quite a question, you know, why do I do it? Why do I give back to the pre-sales community? And I really had to think about that for a while. It was a tough one, but I give back because I want pre-sales as a profession to thrive, and I want people who are starting at pre-sales to feel as though they have support. That's why I do what I do. So maybe think about giving back to the pre-sales community yourself. Have a chat to PreSales Collective. Reach out to people on LinkedIn. Reach out to me. I'll have a coffee. If you worked with me, you know I do something like 5 or 6 a day. So I'm always quite jittery. But yeah, think about giving back to the pre-sales community.
Yeah, there's something very powerful about remaining open. I do a lot of mentorship in my work as a community professional and different industry, obviously, but I'm constantly getting reached out to by people who have either seen me speak at something or just know me from around the community. And at one point this year, I sort of found it overwhelming and I felt myself kind of like going internal. And I realized that I hadn't managed my expectation about output when folks were reaching out to me. Most of the time, people just want to know that they have a connection that they can utilize and that there is someone out there who is open to talk to them. That is ultimately meaningful. Most people are so respectful about time. They wouldn't just come and ask for, hours and hours of your time. But I'll also say that for the pre-sales community, we're graduating academy students often who are hungry for information, and they definitely are on LinkedIn. A lot of them are like the most savvy LinkedIn professionals I've come across in a while. And they're so hungry for information. So if you see these folks out in the world and they come to you, please know they're coming in good faith, and they're coming because they've just gotten an amazing 8-week education that they are so excited to use, and they know what a demo is now and they want to talk to you about it. And most of those calls end up being very generous, but there is definitely a lot of hunger for connection. So David, thanks for bringing up the openness that we have to have as, folks with experience to help others. I think that's so important. Bastian, I'd love to reach to you for this question. How do you connect with others before the end of the year?
Yeah, I love what David just said about giving back to the community, and just thinking about like the it's almost like a wave of redundancies going through the market. Companies like Oracle and Zendesk and Facebook, Twitter. There's lots of things going on in the tech space. That's another form of giving back. Like if you know people that have been affected by those redundancies, just see if you can connect them with someone in your network and try to get them. To find a new place to work. I think that's another way to connect with someone and give back. I really love that point. And another wider subject of connecting with someone in Pega, we do a thing called virtual coffees, where proactively everyone in the organization is linked to someone to just have a virtual call with them, like half an hour to have a chat, and that's great because personally speaking, I really enjoyed the time when we still went to the office and we had coffee catch-ups and we had lunch with people face to face, and so the world has changed a lot from that respect, right? So I really appreciate Pega's initiative to get people to talk again. So that's one way that I do this. That's kind of like forced upon you. But on the other side, like all the things you can do at the end of the years, like reaching out to people who are more experienced than you, because like we said, we typically have a little bit more time at the end of the year. So learning from people that have more experience, but on the flip side, also reach out to people that are new in the organization, maybe. And see what you can share. Maybe you can help them onboard quicker, or share some of your onboarding experience that can help them get up to speed. So there's lots of things we can do, and definitely connecting with people is an important one for the end of the year.
That's fantastic. I'd love to actually ask a question that was submitted to us ahead of this event. It's from a leader, and they ask, as leaders, how best can we help some of our team members who may not have had the best year to help end their year better than when it started? And I think that this feeds in really great to this tip because a lot of what we've been talking about is, the initiative we take to reach out to others for career conversations. But when you're a leader or when you're working on a team with others, let's say, how do you reach out to those that maybe are feeling not so great about ending their year, or really need some encouragement? How do you manage that conversation and how do you help them start the year better? I'll let anyone go ahead and answer.
I'd say it's a matter of perspective. I'd sit down with them over a coffee, and I'd have a chat. Right? What is it specifically? Is it a KPI you missed that's getting you down? Is it that we missed the revenue target in your patch? Because a lot of those, like the revenue target in your patch, you don't know the patch. It could be a tough patch. It could be there could be all sorts of reasons behind something that doesn't individually reflect performance. So I'd really get to the understanding of why the person was feeling that they had failed. And if I was that person's manager, and I was hugely on board with that person, I would absolutely let them know that they haven't failed me. I don't feel like they failed me. I appreciate that you've done this. And once again, going back to one of our previous tips, I'd start listing out some of their achievements and things that I'm proud of, and start lifting them, that it's not all about this one metric.
Absolutely.
I think
Marjorie,
also as peers, it might be not just as a manager, but also peers talking to each other about successes and like the sense of failure during the year. Sometimes an outsider's look into their world might help them, give them new ideas or brainstorm about things you can do differently next year to be more successful. So that's how I would approach it, probably with peers that feel that way.
That's great.
I was just going to add, I think it's, I love what both David and Bastian said. And I think also it's about just creating that safe space for the person to really tell you what might be going on and just asking an open-ended question like, hey, what's been going on? I've noticed that you're feeling a little down, especially if they get that connection, right? And they really feel it. Just open it up and say, how can I remove any roadblocks to make you successful? As opposed to, I think giving it that openness gives an individual the opportunity to even express if there are other, outside factors that sometimes we don't necessarily always realize that are impacting our team members. And just to add to the manager, I think, it should be also a recurring conversation. Every one-on-one should end with, what roadblocks do I need to remove for your success?
I love that. I love the idea that, I think as managers, it's so important that we're constantly opening doors of conversation, even if it just means that we end up getting closer as peers and understanding each other more. It's that one time that you open the door where someone really needs to walk through it because something is going on and you can help. That creates not only a system of trust, but of productivity. Teams don't work well if we're keeping our needs inside. And I love this idea, right? That we're having frank conversations, we're opening doors, we're setting the table, all of these amazing metaphors. And we're also looking left and right, as Bastian said, who's struggling right now? How can I reach out? How can I make a connection so that this person knows that they are seen as valuable to the team? And how can I share some of my insights to help them grow? That's great. Any other thoughts here before I move on to our last tip?
Yeah, I'd say one of my favorite sayings is to be the person to shine the light on the dark areas. And if you've noticed that someone on your team is not feeling great, shine a light. Let's not ignore it. Let's bring it to that forefront.
That's great. Thank you. All right, our last tip. Schedule a mini performance review with your manager. Hopefully we all have performance reviews built into our systems, but what's a mini performance review? How would that look like? Marjorie, I'll start with you.
This is the hot topic. I think it's, a lot of times we rely or have this mindset, at least, the folks in my time, we always had this mindset that our managers kind of told us how our path should go or what our career should look like. And I flip that actually on my team members. And I say to them, I say, you know, your career is your responsibility, not mine. I help you get there. But if you don't help me understand what your desires are, it's going to be really difficult for me to give you that guide and give you that path. And I think, you know, as part of that performance review, you should be exploring opportunities to learn new things and ask your manager, hey, I want to learn this. What can I do to make sure that one, I've got the time allocated for it? And two, where's the budget? Because there are budgets there. You just need to make sure that you're asking the right folks, you know, about that. And obviously, because it's end of year, it might have gotten all eaten up. So just consider your plan for next year as well. But this should be a proactive discussion. You should be having it quarterly, this mini performance review. Again, don't wait till the end of the year. I'm a big fan of constantly reminding folks, I want this, I need this, you need to open this door for me as part of my opportunities to learn and grow.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bastian, your thoughts here.
Yeah, so for the companies I've worked for, we typically have big performance reviews at the end of the year. So that's yeah, this built into the rhythm of the organization. So and it's also time to start thinking about your goals for next year. And typically I'm okay with coming up with goals. I was going to say big, hairy, audacious goals, but I think the trick is, how do you actually make these concrete? How do you think about how are you going to get to those goals? How are you going to achieve them? And to me, that's probably the more important thing about goals. Not just setting them at the beginning of the year, but put some steps in place to actually get them. What are you going to do to achieve those goals? And maybe ask your manager to hold you accountable to that. And that's what I like about what you just said, Marjorie, is having those regular catch-ups and yeah, and reviewing those goals and reviewing the things that you've been doing to achieve them.
Absolutely. Asking and making specifications around your needs for support going
Yeah.
into the next year, being super clear about that so people can do it best.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
great. David, your thoughts here.
Yeah, look, I think there's a magical ingredient that you need with your manager, and that's trust. So if you feel you don't trust your manager, it might be a scenario where you have to have a separate discussion with them about why that is. Now, once you trust your manager, you can look at having a chat to them and doing an informal performance review. Manager, how am I doing? Is there anything I could be doing differently? I really wanted to achieve really highly in terms of the performance review that's upcoming. What's stopping me from getting there? Is there anything that's missing? Is there anything extra that I can do to be able to get to that point? So in a way, you're almost negotiating your own performance review that'll come down the line. And of course, when they give you those suggestions, you got to do them. That's part of your integrity. You need to execute on what your manager gives you in terms of advice to be able to achieve that high performance rating, if that's what you're after. But the beauty of this is that you can have this in your one-on-one, you can have it over coffee anytime, it doesn't matter. You can have that chat and you can start, as a sales coach once told me, it's called nudging the spaceship. So you can start nudging the spaceship to be able to be on target to where you want to be. And where you want to be is probably highly rated in terms of performance. It should never be a surprise. You should never sit down at a performance review and think to yourself, oh, I wonder what this is going to be. You know, it could be a 3 out of 5, it could be a 5 out of 5. I wonder. It should always be something that you control. You control.
I love that, David. You know, I think what this tip reminds me of is that advocacy, we all need to practice great advocacy for ourselves. And one of the ways you can do that is presenting to someone whose responsibility it is to shepherd your career, to shepherd your time at the organization, and be clear about your wants and needs in the areas where you think you want to grow. And when and if you're given the feedback, you know, I actually don't agree with that, or have you thought about this? Really going to bat for yourself if you think that that's where you should go, or taking the feedback and say, you know what, I want to readjust. I think that oftentimes folks, you know, who are being managed see it as a one-way street. My manager tells me what to do and I do the work. But how can we invite the idea that there is a more symbiotic conversation between the IC and the manager to talk about the goals for the organization and to talk about personal goals and to make sure things are aligned. And I think that happens when we advocate for ourselves inside of those spaces. So I love these thoughts, and I'm so thrilled to end on this tip because I think it has a lot packed in here. I'd love to just close us out with a bit of a summary about what we talked about. We talk about these 5 tips, and I'm sure that we could have this conversation about 10 different times and come up with 5 different tips. And I'm sure that some of you are sitting on this call or watching this on YouTube saying, oh, I would do something else. That's great. Do that. We came up with these tips to really think about the holistic experience of being in a job and really thinking about how we can advocate for ourselves, for our teams, for our company, for our role, for our future. And that involves a little bit of chess. You have to think about prioritization and what is the best first move to get you to the best last move to have that big win. And I think the most important takeaways I've definitely gotten from this is that you have to be an expert at advocating for yourself. You have to be an expert at self-awareness and self-acknowledgement and have a hunger to connect both with yourself, with your team, with others. And as we say for all pre-sales professionals, this hunger to learn and want and do more becomes increasingly more important when we think about ramping down so that we can ramp back up in the next year. I'm really thrilled by all of this. I just want to give David, Bastian, Marjorie, any last thoughts about this before we move to close out this session today?
Wow, no, I mean, such amazing tips. And I think, folks, as we talked about the whole connecting with one another, share with one another your tips as well, right? These are our ideas and what we think are good, but each of you have your own tips. Bring that to we talked about sharing with the community. Share it back with us as well. I'd love to hear tips from the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great.
I'd say, sorry, just one more thing.
No,
you
please.
talked about hunger, Shauna, and I've come across quite a few people who haven't found their hunger in what they do. And I'd say it's not something that comes to you naturally. You need to really think about it. So if I'm talking, for instance, to a customer that's a hospital, I know that if I do my job right, I can put in some systems there that will allow the nurses and the doctors to do their job better, which in turn has an impact on the community, might even save lives down the path through allowing them more time to work on people directly. That drives me, right? If I'm working on an education customer, for instance, we're improving the quality of education in the community, that gives me my hunger, but it might not give you your hunger. So I'd actively think about your hunger and how to bring that out to the forefront.
That's fantastic. And what an awesome way to end out this panel. Thank you, 3. I'm going to go ahead and just close us out with just a couple of announcements just to get us going into our days or evenings. I first just want to give a huge thank you to Reprise for sponsoring this event. Reprise has been a fabulous partner of the PreSales Collective and is working with some amazing tools to help pre-sales professionals all over the globe. If you have any interest in learning more about this product, please let me know. I can be found on our PreSales Collective Slack or via email and would love to connect you with the team here. We have a couple of events coming up for the rest of the year. Again, we are just sailing through. I do want to point out a couple, including our solution showcase. This is our 3rd and final solution showcase of the year. So really unique opportunity for folks in our community to have a look at a solution without a salesperson in the room. Pre-sales professionals giving you the 411 about these solutions. You'll have time to ask questions, start to get data points, and really get a healthy introduction to these products. We're really excited to have Novatic and Omidum, who've been partners with the PreSales Collective for a bit, and Salio, who's a new partner to the PreSales Collective, talking about their products to help pre-sales professionals. That is happening on December 8th. We really hope that you can make it. And finally, we have a webinar on December 13th about selling with better stories. This is really about the power of social selling, the power of great storytelling, which is always something that pre-sales professionals are hungry to learn more about. So we're bringing back this webinar. With all that being said, I want to say thank you so much for joining us today.